Great. Just sharing it in a few places, and then we can go ahead and get started. And for those of you that are hopping on, give us that thumbs up so I see you and know that you can hear and see us just fine. I decided that I'm going to do something fun because I feel like every broadcast I regurgitate a lot of the same information. So I'm changing it up this morning. And the fun thing is going to be that every day I'm giving a clue. And at the end of the week, the clues will add up into one word messages. That makes sense. So several words into one message. Yeah, I think that's appropriate. So if you miss a broadcast, you can go back to it and find what the word of the day is. Good morning. And if you are tuned in just to the start of it, know that I'll be throwing the word in at some point during the broadcast. It won't always be at the start of it. So that's the fun thing. Make sure that you tune into all of our broadcasts so you can collect those words and put it into the phrase at the end of the week. I am Juliette Abdel, President and CEO of the Westminster Chamber of Commerce. If you're new on our page, hit that like button and the follow so you can get alerted. Comment and give us a thumbs up so we know that you're here with us and that we can give you the shout out for taking time out of your morning to be here. Hello to you, Wayne and Parker and Peter Brissett. We have our mayor with us, and we start every week off with a mayoral update from Mayor Herb Atchison. If during this broadcast you have comments or questions, please type them into the bottom section of our video stream, as some of our fellow viewers have already done so. The comments will pull up at the very start, and then any questions that we have and comments further along, we'll actually review them toward the end of the broadcast so that our mayor has time to address those for you fully and provide you with the answers that you need. Again, if this is your first time here, we have our video section on this Facebook page on YouTube as well that is available to you at any point in time to review past videos that we've held since March all the way to date. State Representative Tracy Kraft-Tharp, thank you so much for hopping on here as well with us, and good morning to you. If you've not already followed us on all of our social media platforms, we're on Instagram and Twitter at Westy Chamber, and of course here on Facebook and YouTube, Westminster Chamber of Commerce. And if you're not receiving our emails, please DM us so we can add you to our email communications for COVID Digest newsletters that we send out, as well as standalone emails that we have that are informative for you and timely. With that, I'm going to mute myself and have our mayor share with us some updates. I hear there are some good updates and then just not so great, but there's positive in today's messages. So I'm excited for it.
Well, good morning, Juliette. We are going to do something a little different this morning. We found something that we can bring to you that's a little bit different than what we typically bring. It's just mostly bad news. So we're going to start out with some good news and some updates on some things. We have a report out that I received at the end of last week that the city's social media pages are outperforming the benchmark peer cities, often by 2 to 3 times. And a period from June 17th through July 14th, that's a period of 28 days, the city had 1.2 million impressions and 110,000 engagements across all social media accounts. That's a 39% increase in engagements. On year to date through July the 14th, there have been approximately 7.8 million impressions and approximately 731,000 engagements, with a 6.5% increase in our total audience. So from June 17th to July 14th, the city website had 428,000 page views by approximately 105,000 users. And year to date through July the 14th, we've had 2.2 million page views. The top website content this year has been the Eagle Cam, the homepage, PRL registration, water bill payment, tea times and golf packages, PRL content, and COVID-19 information. And views of the COVID-19 information on the city website from March 1st to July 14th was approximately 64,000 views. So a lot of the stuff is going out. This shows that our social media is working, information is getting out, and people are being able to find what they want. Another good piece of news, the Westie Wise business training series, as part of the continued Westie Rise efforts, which provide ongoing support to the business community. The city has partnered with the Small Business Development Center to provide a full free virtual trainings on a quarterly basis. The first training was held on July the 28th, and it focused on how businesses can best communicate online with customers. Businesses were invited to attend the training by email, and for businesses who were unable to attend, the recorded training will be posted on the Economic Development Department website. Now, some information that's going to be helpful, we hope, and people will understand why we've been trying to do this. The Westminster Police Department is excited to announce our partnership with Community Reach Center to provide a mental health co-responder program to help citizens and families in Westminster who are struggling with mental or behavioral health crises. In 2019, the Westminster Police Department applied for a grant offered through the Colorado Department of Human Services Office of Behavioral Health. The state awarded the department with a grant beginning in 2020, which allows Westminster to employ 2 full-time licensed therapists. The clinicians work out of the police department and are available to immediately respond alongside officers to 911 calls and non-emergency calls with a mental health component. We can now provide immediate intervention with the added benefit of a clinical perspective. And according to Chief Cardinals, this partnership helps achieve our goal of providing a level of care which meets the needs of the individual, their family, and the community. Licensed clinicians in the field of mental and behavioral health will now partner with police officers to help the population who are struggling with crisis. By having co-responder clinicians on staff, the police department can now offer expert assistance to people beyond the capability and level of training provided to normal street police officers. The program may prevent an individual in crisis from unnecessarily going to the hospital for a mental health evaluation or to jail and into the criminal justice system as a result of escalating behavior which may be compounded by their crisis. The co-responder program helps the police and fire departments focus resources on other high priority demands by reducing the number of repeat calls to the same individuals. Additionally, it will reduce the cost and impact of hospital emergency room departments because individuals can be diverted to better resources within the community. In certain instances, a co-responder may respond independently when there is not a safety risk present. The traditional public safety model makes follow-up difficult due to the ongoing and regular demands of patrol officers. Clinicians are able to provide continued assistance to consumers and their families by offering aid and resources to help identify more long-term solutions which further diverse people from the criminal justice system. Clinicians are able to provide immediate assessments, thus appropriate community resources can be identified immediately. Previously, officers were limited in their options with minor violations being filed with the courts. As the COVID-19 public health crisis continues and the number of new cases rise, the city is committed to protecting the public's health. To that end, the city has partnered with Adams County to bring a 44-foot RV mobile COVID-19 rapid testing site to the Mac Recreation Center at 3295 West 72nd Avenue for uninsured residents and people experiencing homelessness. Testing and medical services are provided and administered by Advanced Urgent Care and Occupational Medicine. The testing site at the MAC is initially open Thursdays from 9 to 2, but additional hours may be added. The former Adams County Human Services Building location will be open every Friday from 2 to 7, but also may expand. The testing program at both sites are scheduled to continue through the fall, and we are in the process of negotiating an agreement with Jefferson County to open up a program on that side of the city as well. These sites will seek to provide COVID-19 testing for those without insurance. If individuals have insurance, they may be referred to the nearest advanced urgent care location. Depending upon insurance coverage, there may be applicable copays. The tests include a telehealth consultation with a healthcare provider, so the testing process provides results in approximately 15 minutes, which is a great turnaround time. But participants should plan for at least an hour for the total process, from getting in, getting pre-screened, get the testing, and then waiting for the results. Now, one of the things that we talked about at our last conference was what happens if we lose our variances from the county. So we were waiting until the end of last week, and we got some information back from Jefferson County Attorney. So what I'm going to go over is what I received from the county attorney last week, that if we lose our variances in Jefferson and Adams County, which are different, and I'll explain both, then these are some of the impacts you can see from the business side. There are some known behaviors that are contributing to the current increase in cases in Jeffco. For example, many people have tested positive for COVID-19, have reported to the Jefferson County Public Health Case Investigators that they have traveled recently, such as to another state where cases were rapidly growing, or to other counties where they have come in contact with people outside of their household. They have hosted or attended gatherings in private residences or locations, such as gatherings with people outside of their household for like barbecues, house parties, birthday parties, and weddings. Similar to the state, we're seeing a rise in cases among young adults ages 20 to 39. In fact, in recent weeks, almost half of all new cases have been among that age group. So what's at risk? The county's first variance allowed many types of businesses and venues to operate with more relaxed restrictions than the state's. If the variance is rescinded, major impacts would include the gathering size in Jefferson County will be reduced to 10 individuals unless another exception to the state's Public Health Order 2028 applies. That is, such things as events or places of worship. Athletic fields would have to reduce their capacity to no more than 25 players per field. Gyms would be reduced by their capacity to only 25% of capacity, or 50 people per room, whichever is less. Smaller independent gyms may really be hurt by this, because we have heard that generally having to go to less than 50% of capacity makes it nearly impossible for them to stay open. Breweries, distilleries, and similar business would have to close if they do not serve food. Currently, these types of businesses may operate under our variance without serving food as long as they follow the state's restaurant guidelines. Business activities that are not addressed in Executive Order 2020-091 as amended by 2020-123 have been allowed under our variance to operate at 50% of capacity. If we lose the variances, these businesses will be limited to 10 or fewer people per room. Jefferson County also submitted a request for a second variance on June 18th, which would further open businesses. However, due to the rise in rising cases across the state, CDPHE has put a pause on reviewing variance applications. The county's second variance application will not move forward if we cannot reduce our cases with the state's limits. So we started off with a lot of good news. Now, if you're in Adams County only submitted one variance since the COVID-19 state implementation. That was for the Gaylord property, and that was granted. But again, with the rise in numbers, that one is also at risk in Adams County. The last state order dealt primarily with indoor facilities, where Jefferson County's dealt a lot with not only indoor, but outdoor as well. So such things as public pools, those are all part of the variances that have been granted, that if we lose the variance abilities that we've already been granted because of COVID-19 increase in numbers, those facilities could be forced to close. Under the state order, originally in outdoor pools, it allowed people to use only swim lanes for competition practice. If we go back to that, then that all means all public swimming would be eliminated. And then we would probably go back to closing most of our outdoor pools in Westminster, because we only have a couple. And trying to maintain that with the lifeguards and stuff would be a financial drain. So for this morning, that's the biggest part of the report. I know we were expecting something. And again, the information on the variance issue came from the county attorney, who also supports the county health department. So in a call that we had with them last Thursday, we asked for that information specific to what could happen if we lost our variance. And that's what the county attorney provided on Friday. Juliet, open the door. Let's see what we got.
Well, thank you for starting off with some positive news at the start, and definitely for giving us more of that realistic picture toward the end. It wasn't as negative as I expected, but in comparison to some of the other information that we've shared before, this was a little bit better for people to be able to digest how we can avoid having those scenarios happen. Quick shout out to a couple of folks that have hopped on here with us. Jerry's on here, Counselor Bowles, Denise King, a couple other people that are on here as well. Jerry is, it looks like, the county treasurer for Jeffco, and shares it for on the property owner side. They've been assisting taxpayers that are physically, mentally, and financially affected by COVID, and are working to help with personal budgets, whether that's payments or waiving late payments as well. So that's just good for our knowledge. I'm sure Mayor Atchison already was aware of this, so just wanted to highlight that comment that was in here as well. So Mayor, I like to pick apart some of the comments that you shared my way, and this will be no different. So the first I wanted to touch on was the trainings you mentioned. So these will be in conjunction with the SBDC and the City of Westminster, if I'm not mistaken, offering the trainings that would help our businesses gain some skills that they might need. Had you shared with us the upcoming webinar that's coming out, or do we know a timeline on that? I think there might be more information that's on the City of Westminster webpage and also our Twitter accounts. I know the city's been, you boasted how there's an increase, rightfully so. You've tweeted about the SBDC and that webinar that's there. Peter, you're on here with me. I think you're familiar with what's going on, so type so we can share that with people and have them log in as well. I missed this a little bit, and it may have been my fault with trying to type and also listen in. So the police department, it sounds like they're increasing efforts focused on behavioral and mental health. You also mentioned a couple folks that have been hired on or are already hired on in the expertise to serve our residents that are in need of this. How has this really unfolded? Is there, are people calling the non-emergency line and that's where they're seeking the assistance, or are they being directed to that route after they call the main line, for example?
They could have come in through the 911 dispatch, and it also could have come in through the non-emergency number at dispatch. They both come to the same location. But the employees are not employees of the city, but they're from Community Reach, who are now in the police department, sharing space in there, so that when there's a dispatch, they're there with the PD to go out with them. But as I indicated, if there's some that do not present a safety risk, then those individuals may go out by themselves as far as from that group and try to handle it, especially if we have somebody who is a repeat person that has asked for help, and we typically had to respond with police first. So this allows that to keep our patrol officers on the street for more important crimes. We still provide the help, but we've got some experts now that we didn't have before.
Yeah, I think that's a great arrangement. Community Reach is doing wonderful things. So the fact that they're partnering on this is awesome. So this question comes to us from Wayne. Wayne's asking, do we have any idea on when we'll know whether or not we've lost those variances or will lose the variances?
The health department was given 2 weeks to get their numbers down. And this week is the last week, if I recall. I think we still have this week to get those numbers down. So it'll be dependent upon what the numbers show as far as increasing case counts, hospitalizations, death, all of that plays into it. If they haven't been able to decrease the numbers or get them to show a downward trend, then we could lose those as early as the end of the week.
That's pretty fast, and a lot of adapting that's going to have to happen right around the corner. Good morning to you as well, Brian Head. I see that he's given us a note, both to yourself and I, Mayor. Again, for those of you that are hopping on with us, we have Mayor Herb Atchison with us, sharing updates on some positives that the city has been able to implement in terms of outreach, community engagement, social media, and partnerships with Adams County that allow for support and testing of those uninsured folks or people that are needing that support as it relates to health. We've also touched on variances and the risk for the rescindence of a variance on Jeffco and Adams County. And if I'm not mistaken, I typed that in as Adams County only had a variance related to the Gaylord. Is that still accurate, Mayor?
That's correct. That's the only one they submitted. Otherwise, they've stayed totally in control with the CDPHE state orders. They've not tried to get variances. Now, that's
So
for Adams County, but that doesn't mean that that's including all of the ones under Tri-County, because Arapahoe and Douglas did have variances that were granted through Tri-County, but not Adams.
absolutely, and thank you for clarifying that, because we are part of that umbrella, and sometimes people do not see that it's numerous municipalities that are served by this. So I'm going to throw a question at you and see, how we can best answer this. And now that we know these variances are susceptible to being pulled back, there's been this increase that we're seeing, especially in the younger age group that's out there as it relates to gatherings that they're going to or things that they're hosting, especially travel. And we anticipated this, when we talked early on when it was the 4th and even Memorial Day weekend and all of that. We were like, well, we'll see what transpires after all these holidays. And I think we're seeing a lot of that ripple effect come into play. So how can people still continue to operate or, connect with people that they would like to without causing more of a problem in the long run? Because we're getting a lot of people that are at the point where they're frustrated. We talk about mental health. There's a lot of suicide, death rates that are going on related to our teens, especially since they're being more isolated. And we're seeing this, from domestic violence all the way to mental health be an issue, that they're staying home. So how can we engage in the outdoors or engage with other people without contributing adversely to our economy and our state?
Well, one of the things I think we've all talked about, and actually this is many of you may recognize the name of Dr. Brick. She's with the federal authorities out of the White House as part of the COVID assessment team up there. And she talked about over the weekend the fact that the COVID is spreading exponentially. It's getting worse. This is true in places where people gather in large groups. We just had this happen in Weld County with a rodeo that took place up there. It was over 2,000 people there with no social distancing, no mask. And the Attorney General's office got involved over the end of last week and cited the group for that. But I think we continue to do the same thing. Safe distance, wash your hands, wear your face coverings. Now, I talked to Tri-County Health like Thursday of last week, and the last survey they had done of mask compliance in Westminster was the week before. And based on their survey of what they surveyed, and I don't know where they were at or what stores, but we were in the low to mid 90% of compliance. That means close to 90 to 95% of the people that they surveyed in Westminster were doing everything they could with social distancing, wearing masks when they were out in public. Now we see that according to the national groups that some places, depending upon the condition in your home, if you have someone at risk, they're even now starting to say that it may be prudent for those persons at risk to wear facial coverings even in the home, unless you're by yourself. But if you've got other family members who are going out of the house during the day or in the evening for work or whatever, the fact is they could bring that back with them. So it's the real thing right now for both of our counties and our city especially, and all of our businesses here in the city. Continue to do everything you can to comply with the state orders. Ask your customers, deal with your customers when they're not wearing masks appropriately. And always remember there is that exception. Make sure we have hand washing stations. Make sure we have sanitizer out. Make sure that if you're running a restaurant, you're cleaning all the surfaces after each patron leaves. Continue to use common sense. Do the things that we've started to get into a habit of doing so that we can try to keep the numbers down. There is not one variance that's been granted to any business in Jeffco and under the state order on both Jeffco and Adams that we want to see close their business. We need to continue to do everything we can to get our numbers down so that we can stay at least where we're at. Our hope for the near future is to eventually go to protect our neighbors, which then allows us the opportunity to open up our businesses even more, and especially to our restaurants to increase their in-dining numbers up. But we're not there yet. And unfortunately, we've taken a turn, which could be or may not have been expected by the experts, but in regards, the numbers are what they are. We are going to have to continue to look at any kind of public gathering, regardless of whether it's at the city at level or it's at the individual business level, office returns. What's the risk? And is the risk worried about, is it worth being back in that public setting, wherever you're at? You have to weigh the health risk to the people who would come in or the people who are there that could get infected by somebody unknowing coming in. Even though you get a test this morning, doesn't mean that this afternoon you won't show signs. So it's prudent upon us to continue to do everything we can to make the environment around us as safe as possible. I want to keep getting my lentil bean soup. And I didn't mention Parker, but I got my soup last week. So Parker, don't you do anything to close my soup shed. But I will tell you, this is true of all of our facilities who are serving people. They're impacted by the fact that they can't use the total capacity of their business, either as for people coming in to shop, people coming in to dine, coming off to do any kind of transaction. And we're seeing a lot of frustration with people just building up because they have been kept at home for so long. But keep in mind, there are some that have been sequestered in their homes even longer than most of us. They can't go out at all. I have a neighbor who hasn't been out of her house since March. She's afraid to go out because of her existing health conditions. Think of people like that who just could not bear being infected because it could cost them their life. Let's be prudent. Let's take the precautions we need and we know how to do, and we'll get through this. We've still got a ways to go, and we want to try to get our numbers down so we can keep our businesses open.
Absolutely. And thank you for touching on, some of it's continuing what we were doing. And when we hear of the great things like our community that has close to the 90% mask compliance, we're hoping that replicates to the surrounding areas, because then we can reopen. So if we have these, then we can go back to the normalcy of things, or somewhat of a new normal, as opposed to having to continue to backtrack. This comment comes to us from Brian. This relates to schools. So we were talking earlier how it's already the fall, or it's coming up to the fall, really being in August. But with fall coming and schools reopening in our community, there are limitations on the volume of personnel that are allowed in those school buildings. Are school resource officers still planning to be on site that you're aware of?
To the best of my knowledge, we've not been contacted by any of our 3 school districts to say they do not want the SROs back at the beginning of school. But again, schools are going to be different. I saw a piece this morning on Jeffco schools. The question is still in the air: are they going to run buses? If they are, how are they going to run them? They're limited to a very small capacity of school buses. They may have to run multiple buses on the same trip. How are they going to coordinate the start times? And there was even discussion that high schools may not be offered buses at all because the buses will be so tied up getting the elementary and middle schools done. A lot of those decisions really lie in the hands of the school board of directors, and we don't have any input to them. To the best of my knowledge, again, there has been no request not to return with the SROs. There will be some students, depending upon the hybrid model that the school districts end up with. To the best of my knowledge, I have not seen anything from Westie schools that's not said that they're not going back full day with the option of remote learning, but the primary basis would be back in. Jeffco, as we all know, has delayed a return to school. They're going to go virtual for the first part of the school season. And I don't have an update on Adams 12. The last I heard, they're still looking at the hybrid model.
Thank you, and thank you for providing us that update on all 3 school districts. Can you believe it's already almost 30 minutes that we've chatted together? Did you not? This broadcast always goes by so fast. Before I let everybody go, the keyword for today is Westminster. I started this broadcast by sharing we will be sending you subliminal messages every week. If you put the phrase together and post that phrase on our Friday broadcast, then you have a chance at our prize. You have to be the first one that does that, or really anyone that does that will randomly pick somebody. So today's phrase is Westminster, or today's word for the phrase is Westminster. So keep that in mind. We are at our 30-minute mark. If you are rewatching this, give us that hashtag replay. If you think of a comment or question on any of the content that our mayor has shared with us today, please type it into the comment section of this broadcast, and we will have him answer that for you at a later point in time. We'll be back here as we are every day at 11 a.m. tomorrow. We'll feature a business success story. And then on Wednesday, this is probably one that we can segue into right now. We'll actually have with us Jeffco Public Health to be available to answer questions, to also information share with you at 11 a.m. So tune in on Wednesday if you're interested in updates from Jeffco Health Department, and tune in tomorrow to hear about which businesses are open for business. Come out to our socially distanced event tomorrow night from 5 to 7. And of course, thank you to Mayor Atchison for taking time out of your day to be here with us. We've enjoyed our visit tremendously.
See you.